Hi, you. It's me, Nicole Phoenix Star, and this is the Nick Star podcast. Today, I am feeling a little vulnerable and a little fragmented, and I had a really fractured sleep last night, so, that's what happens, and it's okay. I just felt to come here and share things that are just kind of alive in me right now. It's fascinating. I get messages sometimes for people that have known me for quite a long time and comment how, I was always a share around spiritual things and evolutionary things and these type of topics and subjects, and they've noticed the weaving of the wellness and health stuff that I share. And, you know, just comment like it's not a question or anything. Got a bit of a sexy voice today. Anyway, and yeah, like I said to them, I just come to this podcast and share whatever's kind of ripe, and I just need a glass of water, a sip of water rather. Lubricate my throat. Anyway, and it's fascinating because I get the most interaction and feedback when I share things around hormones and menopause stuff. I get a lot of questions and interaction more so than the spiritual stuff. And, I really don't share for engagement. I just share whatever I feel to share. And I don't, plan out things for the purpose of how they're going to be received or anything like that. I am very real and just share what's kind of moving through me. And that's just who I am. And yeah, I've been on my own health journey and had several different health crises during my life, and that has led me down many deep rabbit holes and into very specific education and a lot of research. And I guess, kind of back in the day when I first stepped fully into my spiritual path, when I first moved to Bali, it was super ripe and was my own exploration that led me into a level of mastery, and the same's happened with the health and wellness stuff. I yeah, always just follow the energy, and as I say, let life live through me. It's fascinating riding the waves because, you know, these aren't two separate parts of my life. They are very, very tightly interwoven, as is, things like parenting and mothering and relating and all of these things. And these are, the things that I share and the things that I teach and the things that I counsel on. Yeah, it's fascinating hearing people's feedback and their experience and their observations. Life is a very funny thing, and life has been very funny lately. I had recently this really random experience that kind of thrust me into several timelines of my life. I started watching this Australian show, and I was watching these two actors, and one of them I thought was actually an actor from Bridgerton, and I Googled, and it wasn't. But yeah, so similar, and could be like sisters or definitely doppelganger. And yeah, and then the other guy, one of the leads in the series, I was like, oh my God, you are so familiar. Anyway, I Googled him and went, oh my God, that is exactly who you are. Yes. Okay. So crazy, crazy story. Um, mm, 20 years ago, this guy was in a different Australian series at the time. And one day I was down in Melbourne and I was living on the Sunshine Coast. And I went down to Melbourne to share my birthday with my cousin who was turning 21. I was turning 31. And we were out at this club and I recognized this guy from the TV show. And I was like, oh my God. And no, I didn't say, oh my God. I was acting very cool. And I'm like, hey, you're that guy off the TV show. And he's like, yeah, I am. And the reason why it was, you know, obviously he's older and looks a little different, but in the show back then when I was 31, he had long blonde hair, and in the show he had a very short hair, and it was kind of more of a mousy brown. And anyway, I was at this club and I was talking to him, and I realized now at the time he was 24, and he was kind of new to being a little famous, and so was a little not shy, but I guess not fully into realized fame land. Anyway, it was a crazy, crazy, crazy night. I was single and I'd been separated from my marriage for a year. And one thing led to another, and we ended up having sex in the laneway on the bonnet of a car outside the club that night. It was just this crazy, crazy random situation. And then I went home with my cousin, and that was that. And then I'm going to say maybe 18 months later, I was spending the weekend down in Byron Bay with some friends, and we were walking down the street and there he was. And I was like, oh my God, there's that guy, that wild night. And anyway, we we kind of walked towards each other and looked at each other and went, hey. He went, hi. And I said, I don't know if you remember or not, but about a year ago or so, I met you in a club in Melbourne, and yeah, we went out to the laneway. And he went, oh my God, how could I forget? That was a crazy wild night. And I went, yes. And he's like, that was wild. And he was really like tripping out. And I was like, oh, okay. obviously. Yeah. Anyway, and I said to him, "What are you doing now?" And he's like, nothing. I've got a few hours to kill until I have to go to a thing. I was just gonna get a coffee." And I said, we're going back to our Airbnb and we've got canvases and paints and we're having a little bit of a painting session. Would you like to join us?" And he's like, "Yeah." Anyway, so then we went back to our Airbnb, my friends and I and him, and painted and laughed and had this hilarious time being random humans. And then he's like, "Okay, I gotta go to my thing now." I'm like, "Okay, bye." And I was like, "Oh my God, life's just such a trip." And then we went out for dinner and we were taking my car back to the Airbnb to go out to, I think, the Byron Bay Hotel to watch a band. And on the way home, I got pulled over by the police and was a little bit over the limit. I think I was 0.07. So, enough, but not crazy, but and was taken and ended up spending most of the evening in the watch house, locked up for a couple of hours, because, that's what happens after you run into your crazy sex in the laneway with the actor from the show Day event. Anyway, so I'm lying there watching this show, and there he is on the screen 20 years later. And I was like, "Oh my God." And it was just such a trippy bouncing across timelines and remembering these things that I'd completely forgotten about in, a version of my life when I was much younger. Yes. And yeah, it's and there's been 3 seasons of the show and I've just been watching it and I don't know, like it just has this, I don't know, like I'm really enjoying the series for what it is and the storylines and the character development and all of that. And just, I don't know, it's just a bit of a trippy little situation. Um, yeah. So there's been that, and it's just a funny memory. I don't think I'll ever run into him again, or, I certainly have no desire to seek him out to remind him of the funny story or anything like that. It's just having these reminders come up in the most random ways and remember timelines from a long time ago and versions of you back then. And yeah, my 30s were pretty chaotic and full of suffering. I was deeply, deeply trying to find peace and happiness outside of myself. And eventually, when I was taken into a temple and in Bali and directed within and took the vast, infinite journey inside, that is where I, not so surprisingly, found said peace and happiness, which, then has evolved into neutrality and equanimity. And peace and happiness certainly isn't the goal for life. It's just one of the myriad of human experiences that we get to have. And, the experience of ecstasy and the experience of agony are just as valued to me. And one is no better than the other. And such things is, the vast practice of non-duality that I've been doing for years, and recognizing that having the full experience of all emotions and feelings is the point of life. And it is not to be happy and peaceful. It is to be able to ride the waves of every single experience in every single moment, and the fullness of that. And that is the path to, so-called enlightenment or nirvana or moksha, whatever your flavor is. And even then, such things dissolve into nothing because there is no end point. So life is absolutely hilarious. And yeah, it's a funny thing because I don't know, like last week I just kind of had this funkiness going on, and I sit in the observer seat in curiosity, not trying to work it out and certainly not labeling it, but just curious about this human experience that I've been feeling, and feeling it deeply, and allowing that to be the experience, and certainly not wishing it to be any different or wishing it away, and absolutely not wishing for peace or happiness, rather living the funkiness for whatever it is. It brings out a lot of curiosity in me. And the more you sit in curiosity, the deeper things go, and the more expansive each moment's experience is. And that's ultimately the meaning of life. Ah, that's a funny thing to say. Yeah, so I guess that's my message. Life is a trip, and the greatest way to enjoy it is to enjoy the storms and enjoy the calm and enjoy everything in between. And look, I have some of the funniest, wildest, craziest stories. I actually have a plan of sharing a bit of that sometime in the future. Some crazy stories, crazy mixed stories, but in the guise of ultimately unpacking, my journey of alcoholism and addiction, because I used to think that once you're an addict, the only way to live your life is abstinence. And that's certainly what kind of AA, teaches, that you need to get sober and stay sober for the rest of your life, and we will reward every year that you are and celebrate that. And I did believe that too. And then it became a bit ridiculous to me because I am one of the most disciplined people I know, and I have extraordinary mastery, and to still be at the mercy of booze after abstaining for 8 years, being sober for 8 years, I thought that doesn't make sense to me. I am so disciplined and mastered in every area of my life, and how could one thing have power over me? That actually makes zero sense. Absolutely zero sense. And after I tested and measured, well, I didn't. Oh, well, I was thrust into it by my high priestess, who made me smoke a cigarette and have a shot of Iraq one night in the temple, which I was livid about, but knew that I had to do. And I realized that, and she wasn't doing it to test me or anything. She was just doing it because that's what was happening. And yeah, did absolutely nothing to me, and just showed me that when you master and heal the root cause of the things that you're trying to numb or escape, you no longer need to numb or escape from anything. And so then a few months later, I had a glass of wine and was very curious to see how that went. And again, nothing happened. And then I tested and measured and had a whole bottle, and it just gave me a really bad headache, and I had no desire to step back on the booze train. I realized that I was no longer an addict because I had dealt with the root cause that led me to that. And that is what I have taken a lot of other people that believed that they were addicts for their whole life through, and lo and behold, no longer addicts. Anyway, I have some crazy funny stories to weave through that deeper conversation, and I will when I do. All right, my love, I'm going to complete there today. Thank you so much for listening. I'm so grateful. I am so, so grateful for everyone that listens and send me messages and all the things. All right. As you know, my website is www.nickstar.com, NIKSTARR. All my love. Blessings. Mwah.